Welcome to The More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Rebecca Cushmiter, an aging Gen Xer who's recently come to understand the appeal of the snowbird lifestyle. I am cold. It is cold here in Kensington, Maryland. And I am once again pleased to be sharing the mic with DJ McGuire.
That's right. I am also a Gen Xer who has found that you can stay young at heart by running a science fiction convention here in Hampton Roads, Virginia.
And Greg Matuzak,
a common sense liberal who's just looking for, I don't think there's anything wrong with another, 10,000 listeners. Just come on. I think that's, you just have to find them for me, Rebecca. Just find them. That's all I need. That's all I'm asking for. From Cincinnati, Ohio.
I'll call Jack Smith and get him to consult on that one there, Greg.
Not him. Not in that way.
And finally, last but certainly not least, Kevin Kelton.
I'm a Jen. Put a fork in him. He's doneer. But I am this week's podcast star. I should have gotten an Emmy for my podcast performance this week, and we'll talk about that later on.
All right. And so it is Tuesday. It's Tuesday, right?
It is Tuesday.
We had a holiday and then a snow day, and I am completely lost. I am dazed and confused. So it is Tuesday. It is about 25 hours since the New York Times called the Iowa caucus results for Donald Trump. They managed to call them in 31 minutes before the caucuses were officially over. So I think we can all agree that the winner last night was Donald Trump. Are there any other winners that you all can think of here?
No, I think it was rigged. I think Biden won.
That's valid.
Yeah, it's amazing that this is the one election that he hasn't been talking about like voter fraud, or he's not like, and yet we've seen video of the Iowa caucus where they're doing it with like a popcorn bag, and they're like, there's no security whatsoever on how they vote. And this is the one he's like, no, this one's perfect.
Well, Greg.
The absolute perfect vote.
Greg, describe the people in the room with the popcorn bag for me.
Iowans?
What else stood out for you there, Greg?
The videos I saw, they were cold because they were wearing winter jackets. You got to be more specific.
Yeah, I'm guessing that these are not the people that Trump thinks are sending their worst over our borders. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Any other winners out of this? Besides the state of Iowa itself, still getting to like do the rocky run up the steps of whatever steps there are in Iowa, screaming, "We're the first!"
I mean, everyone in Trump's orbit who's hoping to get a job in his next administration is a winner, including Vivek Ramaswamy.
And Sammy the Bull Gravano.
And frankly, an argument can be made that Haley and DeSantis are winners because by not defeating Trump, they also stand to be in his cabinet.
Sure. How'd that work out for Nikki Haley last time?
She got to be the ambassador to the UN. That's how it worked out.
She did
get the job.
She did really well. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think, anytime Donald Trump is a winner, so is Vladimir Putin. So we should probably throw him in the winner's pile.
Biggest winner, absolutely.
Yeah.
But was it that big of a win, really?
I mean, 56,000 Iowans can't be wrong, right? Like, they represent 56,000 registered Iowan Republicans are clearly representative of the entire American electorate. I can't think of anyone identify with more than Iowa Republicans.
You say that tongue in cheek, but the reason, as you well know, the reason that Iowa is generally the first in the nation is because they was considered a representative Midwestern sample state, a perfect sample representation of the country. Well, we now know that 66% of the caucus goers in Iowa yesterday still think that Donald Trump was the winner of the 2020 election. So that's how representative they are of the United States. And who knows, maybe they are represented.
Maybe they are represented, but like they're not even represented. I'm not sure they're even representative of registered Republicans in Iowa. It was like like 1/7 of registered Republicans showed up. That's Trump's base.
You got to be motivated to go out. I wouldn't even go out outside today just to like check on my car, let alone drive any place.
There is one way that this was representative in a manner that Donald Trump should be terrified of. And that was in the Seltzer Company poll, which is the gold standard for polling for the Iowa caucuses. It found that 11% of likely Iowa caucus goers, not adults, not registered voters, not likely Republican primary voters, 11% of people who would sit in a room for 2 hours arguing about who their local county Republican chairman should be, who their local county Republican treasurer should be, which bylaws the committee should agree to versus not agree to. I cannot tell you how much time I've wasted in these kinds of things here in Virginia. 11% of those people will hit the lever for Joe Biden in a Biden-Trump race in November of 2024. Joe Biden won only 7% of Iowa Republicans as a whole in 2020. If he's getting 11% of caucus goers in 2024, that means
that Joe Biden was popping the champagne last night.
He should have been, because the more voters are engaged, and it's the one thing that makes sense of all the craziness we've seen in polling, and we'll get to that a little later. The more engaged a group of voters are, the more Joe Biden overperforms from 2020. The less engaged the group of voters are, the less he overperforms, or the more he underperforms from 2020. So as voters become more engaged between now and November, that should mean Joe Biden will continue to improve in polling, because among the people who care about this the most, he keeps doing better than he did 4 years ago.
So what you're saying is the more people know about politics, the less they want Donald Trump to be president.
Pretty much.
And the more people who have college educations, the less they want Donald Trump to be president, which may be why Republicans do everything they can to badmouth college these days.
Yeah. Well, Greg, what's your take on this?
So I was going to ask DJ, because he probably would know, who was the last person to win the Iowa caucus to actually win the presidency or the primary? Because we know like Ted Cruz won, Santorum won.
I know the answer, Barack Obama.
Yeah, that's correct. Barack Obama in 2008. He was the last one to do it. George W. Bush in 2000 won the Iowa caucuses.
But he was the last Republican to win the Iowa and go on to be the Republican nominee, wasn't he?
Well, he was actually, outside of incumbents, he was the only one, because nobody remembers. I mean, because
did Mike Huckabee win 1 year? And
Mike Huckabee did win.
Yeah.
Huckabee won in 2000. Well, Huckabee won it that same year, but Ronald Reagan lost the Iowa caucuses in 1980. George H.W. Bush lost the Iowa caucuses in 1988. Bob Dole won the Iowa caucuses in 1996, and he got nominated, but he didn't get elected. George Bush the Younger, he did win the Iowa caucuses. Barack Obama did win the Iowa caucuses. But the Iowa caucuses have really only given us three presidents: Jimmy Carter, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. That's it.
The three best presidents, then.
All right. Well, moving on from winners of the Iowa caucus, we do have a list of losers. Vivek Ramaswamy is no longer running for president. Chris Christie, even before the caucus, stopped running for president. Asa Hutchinson is not running for president. And apparently there was a guy named Doug who was running for president who isn't anymore.
Like Doug, the guy who goes to my gym, Doug?
Maybe. I don't know. We weren't introduced.
North Dakota Doug was out of this a while ago.
Oh, okay.
North Dakota Doug.
Doug Burgum, who actually came out and endorsed Trump last night.
Oh, okay. Exactly. I mean, everyone came out and endorsed Trump last night. Half the Senate endorsed that guy.
Donald Trump knows his mark, or he knows his marks, plural. He knows that these people basically have no spine and that they haven't had spines for going on 20 years now.
I don't think you can count Vivek Ramaswamy as the usual run of Republicans. He's more like the Andrew Yang of the right. You know, he'll go off and roll around in a bathtub full of money and then try and start a third party.
Oh,
No, he's
will.
He's
No.
not going to. He's not going to start a third party. He is going to want a cabinet post in the Schedule F hell.
Oh, good. Yeah. So we'll have Vivek Ramaswamy as what? Secretary of Labor? That's not horrifying at all.
Or it could be worse. He could be OPM, Office of Personnel Management,
Yeah, that would be worse.
wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Compared to some of his other nominees, Vivek Ramaswamy might be the gold standard.
Yeah. No, I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy, doesn't actually want to nuke anybody. Some of the people being considered at like DOD, that they are practically Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
In fact, that might be who Mike Flynn is if you pull off the mask Scooby-Doo style. So we've got a couple people who are still continuing to try and be the Republican nominee for president.
For vice president.
Vice President Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. So Ron DeSantis, like I remember 6 months ago, 8 months ago, everyone sort of quaking in their boots, real regular boots without lifts, about Ron DeSantis, like, oh man, he is like Trump, but he's smarter and he's a better retail candidate. We should really be scared of him. And it turned out that he's just like Trump, but actually worse at it.
I knew this guy was an empty suit a year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, but empty suit isn't necessarily bad. G.W. Bush was an empty suit. Ron DeSantis is like,
Well, I knew that he was also a dumb suit.
yeah, he's like there's something really weird about it, like something off-putting. Like he might hand you like a warm gummy bear and ask if you want to split it.
What I think a lot of us did not take into account, and I listened to, I follow Rick Wilson on this, and he's been talking about how in Florida, basically, the governor is a de facto emperor. And given that DeSantis sort of lucked into the governorship in 2019, he overnight became the most powerful man in all of Florida. And so that basically had everybody, it made it easier for him to get everyone to knuckle under to him. And so his 2022 performance was vastly inflated by some of the things that you see the Law and Justice Party do in Poland or Fidesz do in Hungary and such. But because it's Florida, we don't pay a whole lot of attention because, well, Florida man votes for Florida man for governor. Look what they get. And so Ron DeSantis looked like a better politician than he really was because he just happened to be a guy who lucked into a very, very powerful position that he used to create this facade of popularity and political skill that really wasn't there.
Yeah, and he must have stayed off television because nobody knew about him being a bobblehead. We hadn't heard his voice. Like it's like he somehow masked every off-putting thing about himself.
The one thing about any Republican politician is that they always look and sound better when people aren't watching them. It's the political Heisenberg principle. A Republican will look worse once you start observing them.
It's probably true. There's a new poll out of Georgia. Are we counting this as a loser or a limbo? That
I'm counting the polls. I'm counting the pollster as a loser, but we'll get to that.
Okay, that has Biden at 33%.
Biden is at 33% in national polls. In the new Georgia poll, he's losing to Trump by about 8 points, 45% to 37%. Does that sound about right, DJ?
Yes. At this point, I'm not going to pay. Given the nature of who Biden is running against, approval polling might not be the best gauge anymore because in 2020, Biden did very well with voters who did not approve of either himself or Trump. And if he still maintains that, and I think he has, then he will end up overperforming his approval rating anyway. Not that 33% is a great approval rating. But I didn't really dig into that ABC Ipsos poll. I did dig into the Georgia poll that has him 7 points behind. And dear God, what a fucked up poll. Among other things that these geniuses came up with was that a third of the Georgian electorate has never gone to college. The problem is, if you compare that to, say, the 2020 exit poll, you find that in 2020, only a sixth of Georgian voters never went to college. Okay. That's bad polling, folks. That's bad polling by a mile. Now, I tend to give folks a bit more of a break on partisan polling because partisanship can change and go back and forth. But I sincerely doubt Georgia went from a +4 Republican state in 2020 to a +16 Republican state today. That did not happen. Not with numbers that crazy.
You can't gerrymander that. And I have questions about approval polls.
The last thing I would say is that when they did polling by ideology, which tends to be a bit more stable, they found that moderates went from 38% to 26%, and conservatives went from 40% to 48%. That didn't happen either. So that's just a bad sample, a bad poll. I'm not saying Joe Biden is ahead in Georgia. He probably isn't. They're probably all statistical ties in all the swing states, and we have a lot of work to do. But he is not losing Georgia by 8 points. That is just not happening right now.
And my concern about approval polls, like the straight up, do you approve or disapprove? I think Democrats suffer from a problem that was endemic to me as an emo goth teenager, where I didn't like things. Even if I actually did like things, I would say I didn't like things. So, you get the Democrats who are like, well, do I approve of Joe Biden? Not exactly. And they can't just say yes to that. They've always got to qualify it. And I wonder if that tendency, the refusal to look like a blind follower ends up skewing approval polls. So the people who, on the whole, are okay with what Joe Biden's doing come out as no's or somewhat no, when perhaps that's not an accurate reflection of how they feel day to day.
I agree. I totally agree because, it's cool now to say, oh, Joe Biden, I don't like his Israel policy. He's old. He can't we do better? Can't we find a different candidate? It's very cool to disapprove of Joe Biden. This is a really bad analogy I'm going to make, but I'm going to make it anyways. Cold cauliflower porridge, nobody would vote for it, but if it's all that's there and you're really hungry, you're going to eat it. And when cold cauliflower Joe Biden is the choice against Donald Trump, all of a sudden Joe Biden's going to start looking really good to people that dislike Donald Trump.
I hope that that's true, and I hope that we can continue singing the praises of Joe Biden and singing the praises of Democrats in general, which brings us to our next point. One of the things that I noticed in the 2022 midterms, and I think I'm starting to see it now, is Joe Biden is very good at moving impactful but everyday issues to the front of people's minds at an opportune moment. And I think we're starting to see some of that. One of them, the policies that they announced this week coming out of the executive branch is an increase in food aid to farms-eligible students for over the summer. And it's just a program that's going to, put a few more bucks onto people's EBT cards over the summer when kids aren't getting school lunches to supplement their grocery shopping money. 35 states have already accepted the program and plan to implement it. About 15 states, most of which are unsurprising, are rejecting it. The governor of Oklahoma said that, no, that program won't work because it's duplicative, but whatever programs he's got aren't feeding the hungry kids, so maybe he needs something more duplicative. But I like that as a policy. I like it. And I like it as a strategy because it's going to land in the summer. That money will start hitting people's pocketbooks in June and be fresh in their minds that Joe Biden did a thing that eased their budget concerns, personal budget concerns, very recently. We're seeing now the Congress, or a portion of Congress, is trying to come up with a way to expand the child tax credit, take it back to where it was during COVID. We're seeing FDA scientists saying that they oppose reclassifying cannabis and making it Schedule 3 instead of Schedule 1. So strategically, what do you guys think of all this? Do you think these are good bombs to be dropping, so to speak? Or do you think this is just, Biden trying to throw spaghetti at a wall? Greg?
I think these are going to reach the same people who are going to vote for him anyways. So you and I think this is great. And probably everyone here, we were going to vote for him anyways. Are they going to reach people like you said, how many governors? 13, 15 governors
15
said 15. So like I know the Mississippi governor was like, this isn't going to help. This is Governor Tate was like, this is wrong and we're not going to take this because it helps poor people and we're above that. We're better.
We're better than helping our poor people.
We're better than
here in Mississippi. We let our poor people get poorer.
And this is the discussion I have with a lot of my Republican friends and family is they don't want these policies. They think that these welfare policies and helping the poor that's just handouts and it's not what's helping the economy. It's just more money on. Do you know how in debt we are? And oh my goodness, they want immigration reform. They want. Why are we letting all these well, they're not illegals. They're asylum seekers. Well, they need to build a wall. So he's going to get the same people who are going to vote for him anyways to like him more, but we're going to vote for him anyways. So yes, these are good things. No, they're not good for the election.
I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because it ties into what we're talking about now. I agree with what Greg just said. I think that these policies may appeal to people like us who are probably Biden voters anyways, and I like the policies. I'm in favor of the policies. I don't think they're an electoral help. And when you talk about boosting the economy in summertime, which would be a nice thing, I think that's a drop or a spit in the ocean compared to the damage to the economy that this whole thing with the Houthis could do. Because as Biden gets drawn into more attacks on the Houthis, if he doesn't do it, it's going to affect merchant shipping, and that's going to raise the cost of merchant shipping, which is going to create another inflationary spiral around the world. And believe me, that will take our economy so bad that some free lunches to kids during the summertime, it ain't going to help.
Oh, yeah, no, messing with supply chains and shipping routes will be, sort of like, what was that thing in 2020 that messed with all the shipping routes?
Oh, there was some kind of sickness.
Yeah, and like boats were getting stuck in harbors.
Was it when the boat got stuck in the Suez Canal?
No, that was different.
Something like that.
Wait, I don't understand.
It'll be a replay of COVID, where
you mean the plandemic.
The plandemic where the Democrats did on purpose to make sure nobody could get a refrigerator for 6 months.
So I know we're skipping a little head to the Houthis. Does anyone else watch Fox or is it just me?
Occasionally I do.
So one of the things that they've been talking about with the attacks in the shipping lanes and the Houthis is the fact that Joe Biden is just so weak and he just won't attack. Why haven't we gone to war with Iran yet? But
we attacked them.
Well, no.
Oh.
We just drew a little fire on them, and why aren't we just really just knocking them out? I mean, the entire country. Come on, isn't it time yet that we've just knocked out their entire country? And so there was a report I saw, and I had this discussion also: is how weak does he have to be that he hasn't just gone in and attacked a country yet? And I was like, wait, isn't this what you don't want?
Exactly. Exactly. They're always talking about how Trump didn't start any wars.
Right. But at the same time, they're like, well, obviously he's weak. He's weak because he hasn't attacked full power and he's just doing these little skirmishes. And they're like, that's obviously not a real man. And he doesn't know. He's not in his senses. He's
right.
just not.
I see. Okay. So I get it. So
yeah.
Biden is weak because he won't annihilate Iran, but Trump is strong because he would have prevented a civil war by negotiating, and you would never have heard of Abraham Lincoln. Have I got this now?
Yes, that's right. Biden is weak because he won't attack Yemen. That is the mark of a really weak president.
So, since we're on this subject, what I have found is as much as the Trump loyalists love Trump, I think we really haven't discussed this. They hate Biden. As much as we just don't care that much about, oh, Biden's this guy who has these policies. He's just this guy to us, right? He's just a president. He's just a guy. He'll come and he'll go, and we move on with our lives. They hate him.
They obsessed. Well, it's not just obsessed. They're obsessed, and they have completely bought into this falsehood, this elaborate fiction that Joe Biden is perverse and evil. And for the entirety of his career, he has been committing crimes so horrific that they can't even be spoken. If I say anything about Joe Biden, I suddenly have 50 trolls in my mentions on Twitter sharing me photoshopped images of Joe Biden doing child sex abuse. I'm like, it's Joe Biden. He drives a Corvette.
They'll parrot this nonsense as much as they think they have to. But deep down, Joe Biden, as far as they're concerned, Joe Biden committed two major sins. One, he defeated Donald Trump, and two, he appointed a black woman as his running mate and eventual political heir. That's why they're mad at Joe Biden. And that's why they'll keep going. That's why they'll keep going after Joe Biden, because he gets in the way of them. He gets in the way of their Schadenfreude against anybody who is victims of Donald Trump. Joe Biden stopped the party. So he must be removed so the party can resume again. That's all they care about. They only care about their grievances and their anger and their hatreds being projected upon the entire country. Donald Trump lets them do that. Joe Biden does not. So Joe Biden becomes one of the people they hate. And we have to remember the purpose of political lying. The purpose of political lying is not to convince you that what they say is true. The purpose of political lying, right? No, the purpose of political lying. No, that's the purpose of lying in a bar. It's totally different. The purpose of political lying.
At least that would be honest, though, you know.
Yeah. The purpose of political lying is to convince you that there is no truth at all. And even if it does exist, that there's no way in hell you're ever going to find it, so don't bother trying. It's about fostering disengagement, cynicism, and a general withdrawal from politics and a withdrawal from exercising the power we have as voters and citizens, so that the only ones who do exercise power are the wackos.
Yeah, so Rebecca, since you're running tonight's show, you're sort of like the judge. So we have Greg on one side and DJ on the other, and I'm asking the judge, may I be the tie-breaking vote on this?
The chair is willing to hear this motion.
Wait. Hold on. Before you do that, DJ just ended with only the wackos are getting involved. And Kevin now says, I want to be involved. So what does that say about Kevin? And two, it does say that I actually listen to DJ. So,
oh, wait, did DJ say something?
2 points in my favor, Your Honor. I'm going to just throw that out there.
Actually, the fact that you actually listen to me cancels out your first point, so you're net zero.
Good point.
Well, even before Greg ripped me up and threw me to the dogs, I was going to vote on DJ's side, and I still am. And here's the thing, DJ, I agree with you. I don't think they believe it. I think it is performance art. I remember a comedian named Andy Kaufman.
Okay, let's not compare MAGA to Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman was far and away cooler than anything MAGA has ever invented.
Judge, Your Honor.
They're like shitty Andy Kaufman.
Object with prejudice.
I spent most of 2016 hoping that Trump was actually Andy Kaufman in disguise.
How about this?
Tony Clifton?
Yeah.
How about this? Wait. I have a proposed synthesis. They're Andy Dick trying to be Andy Kaufman.
There you go. I'll take that, and I think that's very well stated.
Actually, yeah, that knowing what I know about Andy Dick, yeah, that flies. That does.
But I think it's performance art. I agree with DJ. I watch these videos now of Trump supporters, and I'm going to make air quotes here, who are Trump voters, but they get interviewed as to, they're at a rally or they're at the caucus, and they say the most insane things that you listen to this person articulate the English language and you say, unless they were born with a mental deficiency, they cannot be this stupid. No person who speaks coherent English can be this insane. They are saying these things because they are trying to own the libs and they are trying to support their side. They do not believe that Joe Biden should be executed. They do not believe that Donald Trump is running the military and is really the president of the United States. They are just saying it to get under our skin, and it works.
But I think there is some truth to the fact that there is a segment of people who have bought into the idea of the Biden crime family.
I'll agree with that.
They think that Hunter Biden was funneling Chinese money to Joe Biden's ice cream fund or something like that. And they do believe that they're corrupt. They do believe that Joe Biden is, has behaved inappropriately with women and children and any number of other things. So I haven't read this yet, but just want to draw attention. Tom Nichols, writing in The Atlantic, has a piece about Donald Trump wants revenge on his political enemies. His voters want revenge as well on their fellow citizens. And actually that gives me some sleepless nights. It's unsettling to think that there are
it gives me sleepless days.
Yeah. It's an unsettling thing to think about, that there is a faction of people out there who hate me because I voted for Joe Biden.
When I was in high school, I had an argument with Richard Hofstadter, despite the fact that Hofstadter was probably dead and that he was an immensely talented and credentialed historian, and I was a 15-year-old nut job. But Richard Hofstadter was right when he wrote about the paranoid style in American politics. There are some people who want to believe this nonsense, and there are others who, as Kevin and I said, just spout it to annoy the hell out of people. But these are genuinely people who believe their fellow Americans are more dangerous than anyone else. These are people who will gladly surrender American independence just so the Russian viceroy will help them beat up on gay people, on LGBTQ people, and on various people of color. That's all that matters to them. That's all that has mattered to them. And it is the fact that over the last 20 years especially, those things have gone from socially acceptable to socially unacceptable that they can't handle anymore. It just used to be part of the water that they swam in as fish. It was part of the norm and they loved it. Now it's not part of the norm and they can't handle it anymore. And they're willing to do anything to go back to the days where they could hate those people. And yes, it should give us all sleepless nights because it could mean the end of American independence.
Yeah. And it could mean that we all have to go to New Year's Eve parties where the only musician left is Vanilla Ice, and that's not good for anybody.
That was really sad too.
Vanilla Ice?
I used to Vanilla Ice. That's and Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go Ninja.
Speaking of the entertainment industry.
Yeah, let's speak of the entertainment industry. The Emmys were last night. I didn't win, guys.
Again?
I've been passed over for the Emmys every year of my life. It's really getting disappointing, and I'm beginning to think that there's a deep state conspiracy against me winning an Emmy.
You will never get that EGOT. You
not at this rate. Yeah,
you're running behind you, and it's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
those two entities have been overlooked by the Emmys.
Yeah, I'm feeling like the Susan Lucci of podcasts in the Emmys. Did she ever win an Emmy? Did she?
Yes.
She did.
She did.
She finally won an Emmy.
After 16 or 17 nominations. Sad that I know that, but true.
Did any of your faves win last night? What were you wearing for the ceremony? What was good with the Emmys, guys?
So the Bear won a lot. And does anyone watch The Bear?
Oh yes, it's fantastic.
Okay, so I can't watch The Bear.
What?
The Bear is it's too it makes me anxious.
Like I said, it's fantastic.
And the worst part is they put that down as a comedy. And I've watched like 3 episodes of it, and through the whole thing, it's just anxiety ridden of people trying, and I don't know if it's the workplace or it's just one thing after another. Like, are they going to get the tableware out? Is the meat going to be ready? Is he going to, I mean, it's just, I feel just nauseous through the whole thing. And I assume there's humor in that, but I cannot get through. I finally had to turn it off because I was feeling uncomfortable. I had to go take a nap. But it won, and it's a great show. I know it's a great show. But no, I can't watch it. The show that I was really happy, the Last Week Tonight with John Oliver.
Oh yeah.
I think is probably one of the best shows out there, which no one watches. But I guess some people must watch it.
Yeah, Emmy voters watch it.
Emmy voters, that one, Bigly. And RuPaul Drag Show.
Yeah.
Won best reality show.
Like, talk about the dissonance of America. We've got Moms for Liberty screaming that drag queens are ruining the lives of our children, and we've got RuPaul winning reality TV categories on the Emmys.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, I don't think that was. I think that was a message, and I'm fine with it. And I don't know if you noticed, Pedro Pascal. Did anyone notice who his date was?
Oh, it was his sister, wasn't it?
Yeah, his sister, who is a trans model.
I didn't know she was a model. She was very pretty. I saw her photo.
Trans model, trans activist, has a podcast. And I mean,
maybe she'll invite us on her podcast if we say nice things about her now. Well, hi, Pedro, sister lady. We like you.
Maybe if our name is Kevin Kelton.
Yeah, Kevin Kelton.
Well, Kevin is an Emmy nominated.
He is an Emmy nominated.
Emmy nominated. Trust me.
Don't think I haven't waved that flag a million times during my life.
Yes, just recently too.
First of all, I was very happy to see Succession and The Bear and Beef do as well as they did. I'm a big fan of all 3 of those series. But I do think there's a problem with the categories of all of the television award shows. And I've seen some of my friends commenting in social media today the same thing I'm about to say, which is we need a new category. We need a category that's either outstanding dark comedy series or outstanding serial comedy series. Because as wonderful as The Bear, Beef, and Barry and other half-hour series of their ilk are, they are just not traditional comedies. And that's not a bad thing, by the way. It's a great thing. Television has evolved. It used to be you had the situation comedy where there was a live audience and you heard laughs and it was very jokey, and I made a nice living working on those things. But it has evolved to the point where half-hour television shows are essentially dramas with some irony in them and a little bit of sarcasm that passes them off as comedies. And again, I love it. I'm a big fan of these shows, but they should not be compared to Abbott Elementary. They should not be compared to The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. There should be a separate category for, just like there's best variety comedy series and there's best talk show, and then there's best whatever it is that John Oliver won. They have different categories of those.
And I would say that's, in some ways, it's the HBO effect. When HBO started producing original content, like shows like Entourage, it started veering comedy into a different direction and making it, gritty's the wrong word, but it just a little more chewy.
No, it's the right word. It's the right word, and that's absolutely correct. Yeah.
Oh, speaking of situation comedies, DJ, I just read Matthew Perry's memoir, which is quite poignant, particularly having lost him late last year. But there was a bit where he talked about having a fight with Justin Trudeau in his youth, and I thought you would like that anecdote, DJ, since I know you're not a fan of Justin Trudeau.
It reminds me that how much of Canadian political history changed because of a charity boxing match in 2013. It's just bizarre.
By the way, I also recently, I won't say read, but certainly skimmed through Matthew Perry's autobiography, written, I think, a year or two before he passed.
No, just a year.
And-
It came out almost a year to the day before he passed.
Oh.
Which is, yeah, no, I didn't realize it either. And as he was getting to the final wrap up chapter, and he was so hopeful and so optimistic for what his next years would bring, and then he didn't really have any. It was really sad.
And so and by the way, Rebecca, this is the first time you and I have ever discussed the same book that we read.
I know. I need to read more actor memoirs so you and I can get on a page.
But I was flipping through this book. I was in a bookstore and I was doing what cheap people like me do, which is instead of buying it, I was reading it in the bookstore. And we all know that he had his struggle with substance abuse. That's no secret. But what struck me was every other page he was ingesting something since he was a baby, literally since he was
Since he was a baby.
When his parents were giving him something for colic. I forget what the medication was.
Phenobarbital.
Phenobarbital, thank you. And every page he is either snorting or smoking or drinking or otherwise injecting something that should only be going into a body under doctor's orders. And it struck me, oh my God. I mean, I knew he was an addict. I did not realize what it meant to be an addict at that level.
Yeah, he was, the quantities of substances that he was taking. He was talking about taking 55 OxyContin a day. Just to get through a day, because otherwise his withdrawal
I've had
symptoms.
surgeries and didn't take 55 OxyContins in a year.
No, it's what he put his body through is just extraordinary, and it was just to feel normal. I know he wasn't even trying to feel good anymore. But anyway, so let's speaking of sitcoms, Kevin, you are a former sitcom writer, and you recently got to do a little bit of a walk down memory lane with the cast of one of the sitcoms you worked on. You want to talk about your podcast with the Boy Meets World folks?
I just don't know how you guys knew about this. You heard about it.
Oh, I must have seen it when I scrolled.
As if I didn't bring it up this week. So there is a podcast about the show Boy Meets World called Pod Meets World. And three of the stars from this show that was a hit in the 1990s, host this podcast. There's a lot of shows now that are stars of television shows hosting podcasts about their television shows. Nothing wrong with that. And I was fortunate enough to be invited on to, as you said, take a trip down memory lane and share with them my memories of the series and them share with me their memories of me, which frankly were pretty limited. Apparently, two of them didn't even remember me until they saw a photo of me.
So you're saying the adolescent stars of the sitcom weren't hanging out in the writer's room with the boring grown-ups?
Well, that's the interesting thing. So you're right. When I was working on that show, I was 38, 39 years old. They were 15 to 17 years old. And they were the stars of the show, very popular show in its day. And these kids were celebrities. They were rock stars. When the audience, which as you can imagine for a show like Boy Meets World was comprised mostly of young teenage girls, when the stars would walk on the set, they screamed and fainted like they were the Beatles. That's how popular these kids were. They were rock stars.
And that was Fred Savage's little brother. Was he one of the?
Yes,
yeah.
Ben Savage is
Yeah.
Fred Savage's younger brother, and he was the technical star of the show. He was the boy of Boy Meets World. He's not on the podcast. Three of the other teenage stars are on the podcast.
Oh, they're no longer teenagers, though.
And it's a pretty popular podcast. They get a very wide audience. So anyways, they invited me on. I did this interview. It was really fun. They were very, very kind to me because I only worked on the show for 2 seasons, and they had every right not to remember because I did keep my distance. You know, I was one of the older writers. They were young teenagers. And, you know, we said hi on the set and maybe traded a joke here or there, but I didn't hang out with them. They didn't hang out with me. You know, we showed up on the set, saw a run through, saw a rehearsal, gave notes and went back to the writer's room. So it was a little surreal, but it was a lot of fun. And I'm such a nerd about myself that not only did I do this podcast and I've now listened to it twice in 3 days, but I have this thing on Google. You know, Google lets you get alerts when a subject comes up on Google. And I have alerts for certain medical things that I follow. But I also have an alert for the name Kevin Kelton. So if my name comes up any place on the World Wide Web, I get an alert about that. And sure enough, the day after this podcast went live, I got an alert that there was a thread on Facebook, or actually on Reddit, about the podcast. And I went and started reading the comments. And people were very nice to me. I got lucky. But I'm actually reading these comments about me talking about my past. And I just posted today, you guys may have seen it. I realize now that I've become Norma Desmond. I'm basically reliving my career on podcasts, and I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. That's all I can say.
So I listened to Kevin's podcast, and they were so nice to him. I felt guilty how much nicer they were to Kevin than they were to than we are to Kevin. Yeah. Oh, I know. And two, it was so weird because every time Kevin would talk, right, he would say like, "Okay, here's this." I would say, "Okay, now my voice is coming." No, wait, it's going to be Rebecca. And then these strangers. I was like, "Who the hell are these people? This is. But then the last thing that was every story you told, and he had great stories. I knew every one of those stories. But, so I tell people, you could go out and listen to this 1 hour podcast or go back and listen to 8 years of More Perfect Union, and you could get all those stories. And take your pick, whichever one you want to do. I would do the 8 years of More Perfect Union. That's just me. But they were great. But I knew every one of those stories. I've heard them at least once, probably more than 3 times. And he does mention us, which I was like, at the 61-minute mark.
So we can all fast forward to the 61-minute mark and hear Kevin talk about us.
He mentions us in the very first
when
minute.
They reminded me about the podcast.
Yeah, he goes, "Oh, this is a big time." He goes, "I've got a podcast too, something." And then I was like, "Okay, More Perfect Union. Doesn't say a word." And then
yes, I did. I mentioned the title.
No, not in the first minute. Not in the first minute. No. And then 61 minutes later, I'm like, first of all, totally enjoying it. Great. And she has such better questions than I ever have. She's very good at it. And then 61 minutes, she's like, "Don't you have a podcast?" And he's like, yes, I do. And he tells this great story and tells our history and our affinity and our bond about how great we are. And I'm like, oh, woo. And I think he mentioned all of our names, but that got cut.
No, I did not. But Greg, you said that you've heard all of those stories a million times, and then you said maybe it's just me. It's not just me. My own wife listened to the podcast today and said, "Yeah, you were good, but I've heard all of those stories before." And she says that, by the way, whenever I'm on a podcast.
Including this one.
It's torture to her. And Jessica loves me. I'm just joking now, Jess. But in a joking way, let me say, it's torture to her to listen to me do one of those retrospective podcasts because she has heard every story. And by the way, I also tell them at the dinner table to her. So,
I mean, because you know what, you got to warm up your stories. You got to learn how the audience is going to react to be able to get your beats, get your laughs. But I was told by a Twitter troll today that I am not part of America's More Perfect Union, and that when Trump is elected, people like me are going down. He actually said, "You're not part of the More Perfect Union." And I'm like, actually. Look in my bio, dude.
I've got a t-shirt. Thank you.
I'm like, not only am I part of the More Perfect Union, I'm hosting.
Yeah.
Listen to me here.
Yeah,
Troll.
And for the record, I love the stories. And I would never tell you that I've heard them before.
Rebecca, when that person says that again, just remind them that they're pronouncing Russian Federation wrong.
The thing I never do on Twitter, and maybe I should do to trolls more often, is, they're like, "Well, nobody likes you." I'm like, "Except for my 20,000 followers." And
there you go.
Compared to your 66 followers, 50% of whom are cam girls.
And the 150,000 people that listen to us every week.
Yeah, no, we found that 150,000, 1,100, 780 listeners hiding under a bush somewhere in Georgia. And so, I think this is about everything we need to cover this week.
I think so too, and more.
And on that note, we are going to go get even crazier this week as the election heats up and the court cases roll in. And, you can find us all on social media all over the interwebs. If you want to become one of my 20,000 followers on Twitter, I swear to God, I'm very entertaining there. I am Rebecca Writer, REBEKAH, WRITER on Twitter. Kevin, where can we find you, your books, and the Pod Meets World, Cat Boy Meets Pod?
Well, Pod Meets World is the podcast. Look for it wherever you listen to wonderful podcasts. Pod Meets Kevin Kelton is the title of that episode, so it should be hard to find. Obviously, my books are still on Amazon. By the way, got a big bump in book sales off of the podcast, so that was nice as well. And guys, I got to wrap this up because I'm very late for my next interview on the Tom Arnold Show podcast. The sitcom that I did with Tom Arnold for 17 episodes. They have a podcast. No, I'm only joking.
They probably do, though, have a podcast, actually. It sounds like something Tom Arnold would have. And DJ, you're still on Bandcamp or at Bandcamp or this one time at Bandcamp?
No, djmaguire1.bandcamp.com. And it's a balance of sci-fi fantasy humor and me singing at the void.
Well, thank you for listening. If you enjoy what we do here, please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Instagram at MPU Fan Club. Please share our link on your Facebook timeline or your Threads timeline or your TikTok timeline, and all your friends and some millennials and Gen Z can discover us as well. And as always, thanks to the late, great Alan Keeney for our theme music. So have a great week. And everyone stay warm out there,
Impossible. It's 12 degrees outside here. You can't stay warm.
We should go to Acapulco or someplace like Ted Cruz. I hear Ted Cruz's place down there is nice.
Yeah, no. The drawback of going to Acapulco is you might have to hang out with Ted Cruz.
Okay, I'm staying home. I'm staying home in Texas where I never see him.